Hi guys, it's Mary McIntyre. Welcome back to my channel. In this video I'm gonna make 6 more apothecary jars. I've limited it to 6 because I have an overwhelming quantity of empty jars and bottles and I need to just stay focused. Plus I don't have room to really display that many more. I've got boxes and boxes full of these, but I really like these jars and bottles, so that's what I'm going to do in this video, just 6 of them. So I've got a whole sheet of labels here. These were free to download and I'll put a link to where I got them in the description box. The top row here and this one here are the ones I've chosen for these 6. So I've actually measured the bottles and made sure that these are an appropriate size. The rest of them are just basically to fill the page so that I'm not wasting a sheet of paper while I'm printing them, because there's a very good chance I'm going to make more of these at some point, let's be real. So every year I do this and I think I'll keep the others safe and then I can never find them, so I know I've got loads somewhere. Anyway, that's beside the point. First job is to weather these because they look too clean and shiny, and one thing I've learned about making apothecary jars and potion bottles is that the grubbier they are, the more authentic they look. I love the ones that I made last year. They're my absolute favourite, so I'm following a similar plan here. So I've got a spray bottle with some water in, I've got some ground cinnamon, I've got some turmeric, which is so potent for making yellow stains, awesome. I've got a used tea bag which has just fallen in my coffee grinds, so a combination of tea bag and coffee grinds there, that will add that, and a little bit of cocoa powder, a huge tub of cocoa powder. You need a minuscule amount and I'm just going to sprinkle that around. So the way that I did this last time was to actually sprinkle the things on and then spray, because then they tend to spread out and look like lumps of crud that kind of got stuck there. So rather than wet it first or use colouring pencils to do it like I used to do, I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of this stuff. I'm going to get a little spoon. So I'm in my kitchen, I'm doing this in a roasting tin, so if I get it everywhere, it's cooking stuff rather than anything that might stain and get ruined. So turmeric is potent. That's a lot of turmeric. Okay, that's probably too much turmeric. Let me just see if I can tap that around a little bit. Okay, that's now just making it clump. Okay, bit of cinnamon. Just sprinkle it from high up. You get a more even sprinkle. Cocoa powder. Quite hydrophobic, but it does make a good mess when you get it wet. Oh, too much. Too much. Luckily that all landed elsewhere. I'm going to take the coffee grinds off once they're wet, but I'm going to kind of put some of those around so when they get sprayed with water it'll just run a bit of coffee juice on stuff. So this is just ordinary printer paper on an inkjet printer, and if the ink on the labels runs a little bit then it just basically adds to the kind of weathering. I'm just going to try to get this stuff wet. So it smells delicious. Okay, I'm gonna get this wet now, the tea bag, and I'm gonna just kind of smush that down. Use the tea bag to kind of dab in those other areas. So the tea bag is then picking up some of the other herbs and the chocolate and the spices. Not herbs, spices is the word I'm looking for. So just dabbing it around and then picking that up and stamping those muddy colours around. once I feel like everything's kind of wet, I might just sprinkle over again with some cinnamon, maybe a bit of paprika actually. I might just grab the paprika because a little bit of red might look nice on that. Oh, that smells so good. So I'm just going to smush that in as well. So I'm going to leave this to completely dry before I cut these out. I don't think the coffee grinds are giving me quite as much as I'd like, so I'm going to use a couple of grains of instant coffee and see if that works. I'm looking pretty scuzzy at this point, but I am just going to spray again for those extra things that we've just added. Spritzing it after you've sprinkled it on, it kind of gives a more mottled look, which almost looks like mildew and mould, and I really like that. But pushing it in will give you some areas that are like a wetter kind of stain, so just doing a mixture of all of them gives you a really authentic, scuzzy, weathered kind of look. So I'm going to leave those because I'm in danger of too much. My too much gene is not kicking in here, so I'm going to ruin them if I get too much more on there. I'm not going to be able to read them if I make them any dirtier. So on camera they don't look anywhere near as dirty as they do in real life because of just camera's overexposing it. If I bring them in closer, maybe you can see lots of mottled staining. It looks really cool. So I'm going to leave that to dry and then cut those out once I've shook off any excess kind of bits and pieces. So I wanted to do that first so they've got time to dry. The first step of making the bottles with the glass is I'm going to use some sandpaper and lightly sand all of the glass to make them matte, and then I'm going to use watered down acrylic paint to just kind of give it a wash of watered down acrylic. The paint will stick to the texture, wipe off the excess, and that will give you a really aged smoky glass effect. I did that just with black last year. This year I want to try it using a hint of dark green as well, so it might have more of a slightly green tinged aged glass. Be interesting to see. I really love that. It's something that I didn't do on my very early potion bottles, and it really weathers them. It makes them look old and dusty, and the shine has slightly gone off the glass because of wear and tear, and it's just such an effective way of making the glass look super old. Once I've done that, I will let that dry, and I'm going to, like last year, actually make some things that correspond to the labels to go in the bottles. And when I've sealed them, obviously the labels on, I'm actually going to dip the tops in wax this time. That's something I haven't done before as well, so it'll disguise any of the slightly ugly tops. This one doesn't have a top, so I'm going to make just a brown paper lid and tie it up with twine, and I'm probably going to wind twine around the necks of some of those as well. So simple steps, but the result is incredibly effective. So first step now, after letting those dry, is to sand that glass down. Okay, it's been a few days. If I don't make these today, they're not going to get done until next week because I need this room for work. The labels have dried awesomely. They look so scuzzy and old, and really happy with those. I'm going to keep those out of the way for now. So I'm going to quickly sand these bottles. I've got two grits of sandpaper here. One of them is finer than the other, so I've got a 320 and I've got an 800. I'm just going to use the coarser one first and just get a bit of a scuff on these. Then I may go in with the other one as well, just to see how they work out. So you're not looking for like a uniform sand here. You just want to kind of take a bit of the shine off and just, it will give the paint something to adhere to better. So I'm kind of trying to catch the high points more so than the other bits, because that's where it would naturally get wear if this was an old bottle. Right, that should do for sanding. So next I'm going to make some very watered down paint, and I'm going to use a mixture of black, but also just add a hint of dark green into this one, just so the bottles have that slightly greenish tinge to the milky finish. So when I did this last time, I found that having the paint very watery, slap it on and then wait just a minute or so and then wipe the excess off with some kitchen roll. So I'm going to go and grab some kitchen roll and some gloves, because last time I'm pretty sure I got black paint in my nails for days. Okay, I've mixed up far too much paint for such a small number of bottles. Oh my god. Oh, I was pouring the paint in and suddenly I was like, wait, you're only doing 6 and they're not even that big. Hopefully, I don't even know if you're going to see the green at all. I don't know if it's going to be watery enough. I'm going to test a little bit on the small one and see what it looks like. Oh. A bit more. So kind of patting them rather than rubbing them seems to be giving me a slightly more aged appearance, but I definitely do need more paint on this one. So I'll leave that to sit for a little bit more, I think. Happy with those, they're looking scuzzy and awesome. So I need to let those dry a little bit before I put the twine around the tops, but I've been putting a lot of thought into how I'm going to make the things that go inside these. So I need to just have a look at my labels again. I'm going to cut my labels out while that dries and then figure out what label is going on which bottle. Then I can make a start on getting the actual things made. I pretty much know how I'm going to make some of these, but with regards to what is going on what label is going on what bottle, I'm not quite there yet. So you don't need to see me cut out labels in real time. I will come back when I've cut those out and figured out what I'm going to do next. Just bringing you down to show you the finish, because I know from up there you may not have been able to see very clearly, but that's the effect of sanding the bottles. Milky and dirty and dusty looking, but you can see in them, which is kind of important if you are going to do something like this where you're going to make things that are going to go into the bottles. So do keep that in mind when you do the paint wash. If you're making it so you're not putting things inside, then you can make them even dirtier than this and then cover them up with labels. Right, I've got some PVA glue and I've added a bit of water to it to make it a bit runnier, which is essentially the composition of Mod Podge, and I'm just going to stick these labels on and then coat the labels in the glue as well, so it will seal in all of the colour and all of that jazz. Just give them a little bit of protection. I've scrunched them up first because you don't want them to look pretty. You definitely want them looking tired and wrinkled, and once you've got a bit of glue on them, if they get soft, you can kind of gouge out a few pieces as well, just to make them look really old and torn. I've got glue left, so I was going to use hot glue for doing the twine around the top of the bottle. And I'm just going to plonk it on the bottleneck this time and see if that holds. So I've just plonked a load of glue on the neck, and I'm just winding the twine. I've got my hot glue gun. I'm going to plug that in so I can do the rest of the cords, because doing it with PVA was driving me nuts. One of the things that I'm going to make are scorpion stings. I'm actually really pleased with the idea that I came up with for those. So I have googled scorpion stings to get a picture of what they look like, and I needed something that was curved upwards, would hold its curve and came to a point, so doing it with wire wouldn't have been quite right. Then I remembered that I never throw away any plastic cups like this one. This was a disposable medicine cup, and what I've done is cut a few long triangles out of that, so you can see that they're curved around. So what I'm going to do is make a blob of hot glue. I could do it with UV resin, but I'm just going to use hot glue for this one. Poke that in so that I've got a bulbous blob and this bit. Once the glue is cured with that inside it, I'm going to paint that bit black and the other bit yellow, probably with nail varnish, because nail varnish sticks to hot glue better than PVA acrylic. The dragonfly wings, I'm going to use some UV resin. I'm going to use one of my silicone moulds, the coaster mould. I'm going to rub some of the iridescent nail pigments, the ones that have super subtle colouring, on clear resin. Make some wing shaped blobs of UV resin on top of that, cure it and peel them off. The colours aren't going to be particularly obvious through a kind of dirty glass bottle, but I just thought that idea was really cute. So that's what I'm going to do for that. Spider oil, I'm just going to have a viscous liquid with some black mica or colour pigment in. Same with the blood, what crow blood is. Water tends to be too runny for these sorts of applications, so what I'm thinking of doing is using some hand sanitizer. I have a huge tub of it here from when I was doing workshops during the pandemic, and I've just got absolutely loads. Oh, I always forget this glue gun has an on-off switch, so I wait for it to heat up and it doesn't. Yeah, so bulbous gloopy liquid, I'm going to use the hand sanitizer and use colorants in it. Skeleton soup, I think I'm going to use water and maybe some flour and mica powders again to make a kind of milky grey sludge. What else have we got? That just leaves me with toad warts, and again thinking about possibly doing something with hot glue for that. Just make some knobbly things that look like they've been cut off. They need to be quite small because that is going in one of the smaller bottles. So I think, yeah, the hot glue is probably going to be good for that. I could do it with UV resin, but UV resin's expensive and I don't want to do everything in UV resin. These are now cured, so you can see the colour at an angle. Forgot to pop the air bubbles, but it doesn't really matter for this purpose. So that's worked out really well. The toad warts, all my little blobs of hot glue, I've left all the strings on and smushed them all together, added some metallic bronze and some sap green. That ended up too green, so I've gone in with a bit of burnt umber and just smushed on top with a sponge, so it's a kind of mixture of all three of those colours, and I've just smushed it directly on my mat, so I'll let that fully dry and then it can go in the bottle. And I just used my yellow nail varnish to paint my scorpion sting. I'll see if I can find the reference photo I used for those. So I now need to make the 3 liquid fillings. Okay, crow blood. I'm going to use the pump dispenser to get some of the hand gel in there. I'm going to colour it in the bottle. Okay, for spider oil, I'm just going to pour some in. I'm going to add black mica powder to that. Will I? Do you know what? I think my resin dye might be a good call here. My Vista black pigment. It's very pigmented. I know it's over engineering, but if I put some of that in, if I can put some of that in there as well. I honestly thought that the resin pigment would mix in with an alcohol gel, but it's not. It's kind of separating into chunks. But that's okay. That's really interesting. That is really not wanting to mix together at all. It's just turned into like a separated mess. But from the side, it looks like a black liquid. I'm pretty sure spider oil is not even a thing. I'm trying to think what it would look like if it was a thing. I know not all spiders are black, but I think that'll work. I'm scared of putting anything else in there in case it makes it worse, because it's really not mixed very well at all there. What might work though are the clear pigments that I have. they behave like alcohol inks. If I have a deep red mixed with brown, let's see how this behaves. Blood in any kind of quantity is always extremely dark, and it would be very, very liquidy, like viscose. I think that's okay. For the skeleton soup, do I want to use this again? Quite like the texture of that. I'm going to pour some of this in here. Use a long thin stick for this. I do want to add a little bit of that black actually, just so I've got a hint of greyness here. Maybe it's the mica that won't mix with the alcohol stuff. Gloopy soup. So maybe the black did mix in okay and it was the mica that's gone chunky. In that case, in for a penny, in for a pound. I'm going to add some of my white pigment and see what happens. Again, skeleton soup, not really a thing, but if it was a thing, it would look kind of like this, I think. So here are my dragonfly wings. You have that shimmer. Ideally you'd top coat both sides, but it doesn't matter for this project. Here are my scorpion stings. That's my toad warts. This particular jar doesn't have a lid, so I have just cut out an old cup, a calibrated cup that I don't use anymore. I'm going to glue that on top once I've put these wings in there. So you can see them in there, you can see a bit of the colour through them, which is great. Scorpion stings can now go in. That nail varnish is just not drying because it's cold and damp. Once they're sealed in there, it won't matter. That's the scorpion stings. Finally, get these little warts into here. So they're hard to see, but that's okay. You want those to look kind of fairly gross. So yeah, that's those. So I'm going to glue the lid onto this jar, and then finishing touches. Right, I'm just melting some wax. I'm doing it directly in a pan because it's a really old candle and I'm not particularly worried about damaging it. So I've got a very low heat, and it's my pan that I used for candle making when I used to do a bit of that. I have decided that I'm going to add some of this white kind of stone into my skeleton soup, just so you might get the odd hint of something. It might look like bone fragments, especially when it kind of sits towards the bottom. So I'm chucking some of that in before I wax the lid closed. I am going to colour it with a little bit of mica and see what happens. When it dries, it's going to dry kind of like a natural wax colour. I'm going to see if I can add a bit of something with the grey. I'm gonna try this with one of the small ones first and see how I get on. So I'm just going to take the bottle and dip it. Let that set a little bit. I'm actually going to turn the heat off on my wax. I can finish melting it later, but it's really hot at the moment, so it's not going to set particularly quickly when I get it off. So you can see that it's kind of collecting around the top. So I'm basically just dipping, pulling out, turning it over. Finishing touches now. So I have got these little hot glue kind of badges that I made earlier when I had the glue gun on. I've got a little frog to go on the toad warts one, skull and crossbones to go on the scorpion sting, and I've also got a little potion bottle that's going to be kind of like my antidote to that, which I'm going to hang around there. I've got my skeleton soup, so I've got a skull for that and some skulls and beads that I'm going to hang off this while my glue gun heats up. I got some more bits of jewellery and beads out to have a look how they looked, but it didn't work. These are too weathered, so the bits that I'm tying on now I am going to weather. I'm going to glue on the badges. Okay, so off camera I'm going to weather these bits of cord that I've just added, and I'm going to see if I can find anything that I can hang on the crow blood one. So just to recap, showing you up close, we have our dragonfly wings, and I've got a little dragonfly charm there that I weathered. Everywhere on the labels that had a tear, I've gone in with a bit of black and made it look like the dirt is accumulating around the tears and also around all the outside edges, and that really makes everything look super old. I've got my spider oil, which is just a nondescript black gloopy stuff behind all of the kind of waxy stuff on the top. I don't know whether I regret doing that with the glue gun, but I like it. It looks cool. Here we have my scorpion stings and a little anti-venom bottle on the front. Again, weathered the label, weathered all of this, put a little skull and crossbones badge on. Love, love. In here we have my skeleton soup, so I've got my little skull beads that I weathered down a bit with some black paint and my little skull thing. So it's a nondescript gloopy white liquid, but if you tip it you can see the bits of gravel in there that look like bits of bone, so that's really cool, very scuzzy looking. The smallest one was my wart toads. No, it's not, it's my toad warts. So I've got my kind of froggy type symbol there, and it's just a small bottle, not really much else on there other than weathering. And finally, my crow blood. I found some wings in my charms box and a little kind of six-pointed star. So it's got, again, gloopy liquid that's dark red, as you would expect if you had a bottle of blood. I love how the wax has turned out. I think it looks so cool. I've weathered everything. Everything has got like dry brushing with black acrylic. All the cords, the wax, the labels, the bottles, everything just looks super old and dusty, and that's exactly the aesthetic that I was going for. I'm just so in love with these, so I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks for your support. I hope you're enjoying the kind of Halloween themed videos. So yeah, take care, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye for now.